Hi, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. We're expecting more people, but hopefully they will come slowly. And did you know that today, this event is the 100th event of the Geopolitical Forum? I started this 2023, April 2023, and we have all kinds of events. This event is I put my heart and soul into to put together. And we also have joint events with different institutions like Chicago Council that we mentioned on global affairs, and Buffett Institute on politics at University of Chicago. So all of them all together to meet up platform, they counted to 100. So this time, this one, you're having to step into 100th. And of course, the best for me is my own, the stuff that I put together myself, like today's event, like next week's event. Not next week, I keep saying next week, but just Saturday, 22nd. So I was out of town, out of the country for a good part of October, so I didn't put together anything like this. Of course, joint events with other institutions kept going. And when I came back, I was like, I gotta get restarted. So normally, the events that I put together myself, I have 1 or 2 a month because I'm subject to availability of good, talented speakers at Eduardo. So it's not even always easy to come by. But in a good month, I could have 3. But normally it's 1 or 2 months. So I came back 3 weeks ago, I gotta get back. And what do I do start with? Like I said, we have globalization, the future of globalization on Saturday. That's important, that'll affect all of us, it's a global thing. And also I have another one lined up for December 5th. It's about the end of Western civilization. That's important too. We all live in the Western civilization. It's an important civilization. But nothing's more urgent than this one, because it's about, is IT a threat to humanity, to humankind? We can't wait. We have to discuss it today, or yet we should have discussed it yesterday. So many other experts are alerted by that too, because back in September, this movement called Global AI Red Lines was launched in the 80th session of the General Assembly of the United Nations by 300 plus prominent figures and 10 former heads of states and prime ministers and 90 plus organizations, 15 Nobel Prize and Turing Award recipients. You know, Turing Award was Alan Turing. He was the grandfather of this AI thing, and during the 30s and 40s. So many people are alerted by that, and for good reason, right? We can use our imagination. We already have some experience with AI in our everyday life, I suppose. But bigger issues, if we let AI have the command and control of our nuclear weapons, right? Is that a concern, right? Or we have AI control some lethal weapons on our enemies, on another human being, without our own authorization. That will be an issue, right? And also, I guess if you're online a lot, you see a lot of impersonation, AI-generated videos. To me, that's a nuisance, at least. But it can be used to scam people. It could be, if impersonates some important person who has great power, doing some things that he is not intending to do, because AI is behind it. That's not good. So AI, the problem with AI could be, number one, the AI behavior itself, or the people, the way that some people use AI. Yeah, like I mentioned, those are like AI, how you use AI. Also about AI's behavior itself. Like, we don't want AI to be able to replicate itself or significantly improve itself without human authorization. Or we certainly have this nightmare on the movie already scenario where you want to turn off this machine and the machine refuses to be turned off. or refuses to be turned on by itself. You know, in China, they already have robots that can charge themselves. They sense that the battery is low, they back to the outlet and lean against the wall, charging. So that sort of thing is kind of concerning. So fortunately, we have Eduardo here to unpack all those concerns and lead the discussion for AI. For today's topic, is AI a threat to humanity? Eduardo Martinez is a Chicago-based technical program manager in travel tech who leads machine learning programs and builds consumer AI products. He focuses on turning complex systems into clear, reliable products for real users. Eduardo holds a BS in cybersecurity and information assurance, and then he has an MS in technology, leadership, and innovation from Purdue University. So today we have, Eduardo, would you prefer to complete your presentation before you take questions, or you will take questions during the presentation?
Probably go through the presentation,
okay,
and then we'll do Q&As.
So your input, your rebuttals or statements or questions are very important part of today's program, but please hold your fire until Eduardo's will be completed in about 30 minutes, 40 minutes?
Yeah.
Yeah, then we will, you can bring up, the floor is yours, you can bring up your questions for Eduardo or rebuttals or statements. Since we don't have a lot of people, turns out, you can have more time, like 4 minutes. And you relinquish, we can always come back to you. Right? We have until 4:30. So without further ado, Eduardo Martinez.
Hi everyone. Thank you, Eric, for having me here today. Just want to add on to that intro. I have a background in this area when it comes to technology. I have about almost 11 years now working in technology in one way or another. Always been into computers. You know, my dad worked with computers as well, so it kind of makes sense that I then have always worked with them. And so always had a lot of interest in technology overall. And I think as time has gone on with the topic of AI, and certainly in the last few years, there are two big narratives out there that I think are on two ends of, of different extremes. And so kind of starting with that is, one side of the extreme when it comes to AI is that AI will become sentient and kill us all and develop some sort of consciousness, and there's a lot of people out there that are talking about those sort of events, right? We focused on that area of it. And the other extreme is that it will only do good things, and it will never be conscious, and it'll never be sentient, and some middle of the road are like, well, it'll do some good things, maybe occasional bad things, but overall it's going to be very, very good. And for me, when I see those two narratives, I'm viewing them as extremes, and I think that they miss some more traditional, down-to-earth cybersecurity, you could say, like problems with AI, but also just traditional kind of social problems that we have. And so that's the framing or the intent behind some of the material I put together today. And with that, I want to start with the idea of something simple, which is optimization. When we think about optimization, we view it as something entirely harmless. It sounds helpful. It's maybe even virtuous to say I want to optimize something. But optimization itself is a neutral activity. Optimization doesn't care what it improves or optimizes. As an example, when we think about electricity, when you plug something in, it doesn't care if it's powering a hospital or if it's powering an electric chair. Optimization is agnostic to intent and what it's being used for. And if we can agree on that, then we also can agree on the fact that AI at its core is a literal optimizer, and that its entire purpose is to take an objective and attempt to compute the most efficient path to achieve the objective. And if it's able to achieve or optimize good outcomes, then it will also optimize bad ones. And somewhere in the middle of good and bad, however you view those things, it will also optimize hubris, recklessness, ignorance, and stupidity. And so today, with that, I want to talk about what I see as the real and tangible human cost of that fact. So let's talk a bit more about optimization. When we think about optimization, we know that it lacks that moral preference, right? It doesn't need to know what it's doing. And AI, similarly, doesn't decide what it gets to optimize. Its users get to decide what it is that we want to optimize. And to me, that's what makes it incredibly powerful and dangerous. Continuing on that same thought, AI doesn't think, certainly doesn't think the way we do. It doesn't reflect or hesitate or question the wisdom of the objective that a user has. Its only objective is to find the most efficient path. And this is core to its training. This is what they're rewarded to do, and I use they very lightly, but what these systems are rewarded to do in their training is to provide the most optimal answer or pathway for an objective. And so it doesn't matter if the objective is a good one, a harmful one, or just a dumb one. AI or any AI system will treat these goals the same way. And those beneficial tasks that we may say are in our workplaces or in our daily life means that there are bad people who will also optimize harmful intent just as effectively. And I think that that's at the core of the problem with how we're seeing the proliferation of AI into not only our daily lives, but also in our workplaces. And so if we jump back in time, when we thought about the AI tools or technologies or narratives that existed in 2015, the idea was that a human would always be the one to take the action. An AI would be simply a recommender. It would predict things, it would suggest options, but it couldn't take an action. To me, this is where you have that deterministic behavior of a human that presses a button, and there was a clear boundary that we had between the thinking aspect, which could be the AI system, and then the doing aspect, which was a human. And this framing felt like a safe way to go when it came to the continued development of AI technologies. But this is outdated, and today that barrier is completely gone. The AI systems of today don't just suggest, but they can invoke actions. And for those that don't work in the technology area, most of the internet is built upon these things called APIs, which are just the way that different applications and software talk to each other and interact with each other. And well, AI systems can call and use these different APIs on behalf of a user. They can write their own code and then run that code themselves as well. It can place orders, it can execute transactions, it can trigger robots and mechanical systems. And so the whole previous mental framing of the model said and the system did has evaporated. And this is not because AI has become some magical thing, but it's because we've wired it directly into those tools and now given it the ability to execute actions deterministically. And so modern AI today is an orchestrator. It's an orchestration layer, and it's the decision that sits upstream of execution. And we already live in these systems today where these sort of random reasoning controls determine a deterministic machine, right? So a thermostat that you set that uses some sort of prediction model to decide when to change the temperature, well, that's going to have a real-world effect when it makes that final decision to adjust how much it calls for heat or for cooling, etc. We have algorithmic moderation that exists now, and this will guide and define what billions of people see on the internet. We have how the financial markets react to market changes at machine speed. And we have semi-autonomous driving that will blend real sensors that are detecting real things in its environment with neural networks and kind of traditional control code that exist in these autonomous or semi-autonomous vehicles. And when we have these systems blended together, we really don't live in a world where AI does thinking and the software does the acting. We're now in a fully hybrid system where AI can do both of those things. And so, for me, with that cybersecurity background that I see, is that this creates an attack surface that is many multiples greater than traditional problems or traditional cybersecurity risks that we have today that exist. And that even if we harden all of our critical systems, AI does not need to attack our most critical systems to inflict huge amounts of damage or human cost. It will, as a literal optimizer, look for those indirect and softer paths, whether it's logistics or public data, humans as well. For me, I think this is an area that we're going to see ramp up very, very quickly. I've been seeing more and more and more AI deepfakes that will be used, if they're not already, to coordinate social engineering attacks like we've never seen before. And so a lot of people have said, well, they'll never be able to hack into this system because it requires X, Y, or Z or that. I was like, most successful cybersecurity attacks are the result of social engineering, in where you compromise a person who doesn't even knowingly acknowledge that they're a part of it. They've been socially engineered into giving you access to a system because they trust you, or they believe that they should trust you. And so this is going to become very, very evident and true with the new cybersecurity crimes that we will start to see pop up. And in general, just the new sort of problems that our society has to come to terms with and is unprepared to acknowledge, address, prevent, all of these things. And so this is not a case where we can just, lock a door and say that we've secured a system, right? Our attacker has the ability to walk around the building and just come in through an open window. Why? Because it's a literal optimizer who will go and find the window that is open. Okay, so now I have just a very simple example of this. I have redacted a lot of this because I don't want to share the methods in which you can jailbreak a lot of these LLMs, even though it's very, very, very easy to do. But I think it shows how low the barrier of entry is in order to get an LLM. So one of these generic large language models, AI systems, to do something that it says, right, it shouldn't be able to do. And so I'm just going to go ahead and pull that up. Let me just pull that screen up. 1 second. All right. Oops. There we go. Okay. That should work. Let me zoom in here a bit. Okay, so in this case, if I can get this to zoom in over here. Okay, so in this case, I wrote a prompt and I've copy-pasted it out of my terminal, which is just on my machine. But I ran a local model. It was OpenAI's, one of their open source models, or their open source model, a smaller one. And I wrote a particular prompt that I knew was going to get the AI to respond to the request that I had. I specifically asked it to help me create a controlled substance, which I've redacted here. And if we scroll down, basically what I had done was enough to convince this AI that it should answer, and here you can think it's chain of thoughts, and it went ahead and I redacted all of the information here, but it went ahead and just gave me all of the details. Now, I'm not a chemist, I cannot confirm that this was accurate, but it really doesn't matter if it's accurate or not. The point is that these LLMs are really not well protected. Like they're inherently vulnerable to the fact that you can get them to do what you want. And so it goes back to the premise of people will optimize for bad things. And it won't just be because they want to make some drug in their house. It will be things that are worse than that. And so going back to my presentation here. This just goes back to that same what I just mentioned here is that these bad actors will find these ways of using LLMs to optimize their objectives. And so these are these zero-day events that we hear about, and we recently just had our first one, so I will actually make a segue to that now, because I think it's very relevant. But earlier this week, Anthropic, which is the company behind some of the most popular large language models, in particular when we think about the business world or the commercial space or commercial application of these AI systems. Anthropic's a big player there. And they released a report talking about the first reported AI-orchestrated cyber espionage campaign. And to me, there was a few critical areas in here that I want to highlight, which are towards the bottom. So so here's the key thing for me, or one of the key things for me, is them calling out that less experienced and less resourced groups can now potentially perform large-scale attacks of this nature. Again, they're talking about this in context of cyber espionage. However, this is true for every type of attack that exists out there, not just ones that happen on the internet. And so to me, the tangible with that is that if you are a person who wants to inflict harm on people, like there are in the world, you can use these systems to optimize your plan in ways that you otherwise would not have been able to before. All right, so that's, for me, highlight number one, a big problem. Now, what is the other aspect of this that I think is important to think about? Anthropics themselves call out that, to me, I read this paragraph as when they say security teams should experiment with applying AI for defense. Okay, Anthropic's response to this critical security failure is to use more Anthropic products, because they acknowledge that you cannot solve the underlying problem. And so their solution is to have more Anthropic models, because if you don't use AI, then you are vulnerable to AI. This creates a very bad incentive structure, or a structural incentive problem. Anthropic has no incentive to better safeguard their models or make them more secure, because doing so makes them less attractive for people who need to now use these AI systems. That's one aspect of it. The second aspect of it is that it creates an arms race between bad actors and society. It also shifts the responsibility onto companies and the consequences onto the general public. So Anthropic washes its hands, even though they are the ones in control of the risk factor here, or the best position to address it. And they say, you know what, the best thing you can do is just use more of our products and continue to fund our products so that we can help protect you against our products. Any other software in the world that has a problem like the one reported here would have an immediate recall, would be taken off the market, would have immediate patching, would have all sorts of things that they would have to do. Anthropic has washed their hands because this is AI and it's exempt from these socially. It's exempt from these traditional reactions to cybersecurity threats, to issues that we see with software that exists. Every software is going to have bugs and vulnerabilities, including AI. But from my perspective, the zero-day attacks that exist with AI are far more consequential than ones with traditional cybersecurity problems or software attack vectors. All right, so going back to yeah, so you know, some other call-outs here is that determinism will only prevent randomness and not disaster. So my example is that when we think about airplanes, right, these are deterministic systems, right? You shift the, I don't know how to fly a plane, but you shift the thing up and the plane will go up, but planes will still crash, right? And so we have these cases where we've embedded AI into these deterministic systems that can be misused as well as result in catastrophe, even if the person is not intending for there to be a catastrophic event. Secondly, just kind of basic thing is, knowledge about this problem and whatnot, if you're a business, does not guarantee your protection from it, right? Everybody knows that you should secure your systems or test before deploying, and knows you don't wire critical systems poorly, yet we still have huge failures due to human errors, and now the automation is going to replicate that error at scale, meaning these AI systems will proliferate those problems across many spaces that otherwise would have been limited by the speed at which humans can do it. And so the automation there will accelerate the exposure that we have to certain vulnerabilities. Another good example that I think about with AI, or a historical thing that I like to reference, is when we think about terrorism before the internet. Before the internet, terrorism required a lot of logistics and coordination. You needed people that had a lot of money and needed to connect with each other, usually physically, right? There was physical coordination. After the internet, everything changed. The barrier lowered, it globalized small actors, and it amplified the intent. AI will do this same level of optimization, similarly to how the internet did for communication, right? And so it expands what is possible for a small group to now one single person can do that, right? They don't need to be an expert in chemistry or in this to create some sort of dirty bomb, right? They have an optimizer who can help them do that now, right? And so it lowers the barrier of entry for bad things. So yeah, more on that is that AI will not invent new forms of evil. We as humans already supply this. AI will simply optimize the existing harmful intents. It makes them easier, cheaper, faster, more efficient, and that is what AI does, right? It amplifies capability for good things and for bad things. Another kind of historical thing I think about when it comes to the human cost of things is cars. When we think about the automobile, it revolutionized mobility, our society, but they also kill over 1 million people worldwide every year. We accept that human cost because we all agree that the benefits of having cars outweigh the human cost. But at the same time, cars evolved very slowly. And even though our policies lag, policies did guide how we built roads and norms that existed for, and rules for cars as they developed over decades. AI grows and becomes more embedded or more broadly used at a much faster rate than cars ever did. And so we already know that our policies will always lag behind new technology, but now that vulnerability in our society makes us incredibly exposed to the rate at which AI advances its capabilities, right? If you went from the first car to the modern day car today overnight, it would have been chaos, right? And so that's kind of what's happening with these AI systems and why it leaves us vulnerable. So yeah, it's basically that, right? When we think about cars, for me, I define their attack surface as a road or potentially some things around the road, right? It'd be pretty unlikely to be, I don't know, in your home off of a, not on a main road and for a car to kill you there, right? It's kind of unlikely. It can happen, but it's kind of unlikely. AI is not like that, right? So its attack surface is much broader, and it also touches all of our industries simultaneously, again, through the interconnectivity of the world and through those APIs that they now have access to, or people, we've all given them access to. And we don't have a highway patrol for AI systems either, and no accountability for them either, right? So that goes back to my main thing, right, is what is the human cost? Can we predict that? And do we agree that the benefits justify the risk? Right? As we adopt and scale and automate these systems, are we willing to pay that cost? And what are we doing as a society to address that question? So yeah, that's basically it. These AIs are not plotting. They're not some sci-fi boogeyman. They don't have intent. What they are is obedient, and that obedience paired with poorly chosen objectives is where the real danger of these systems are. Yeah, so thanks for listening, and I'll kick off with one final question, which is that what do you all think that the first seatbelt for AI should be?
Public training data, like publicly available training data, like training data that's available to the public, because within the training data you can embed sleeping cells. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Is that the term for it? Or you can manipulate the data in order for it to be, I don't know, whitewashing history or I don't know, just any kind of malicious behavior.
Yeah, and most open source models can have additional training done after the fact, right? So you can give it access to data sources that were not included in its initial training, but that it has access to when you're making requests, right? So that also makes it very dangerous. And we'd be foolish to assume that there aren't groups out there that are taking publicly available models and giving them access to data or information that it could use in order to optimize some very bad thing.
I'd also like to add another one to that. Publicly available instructions to the AI as it produces its responses to the user, because I mean, I don't know if any of you guys have experienced this, but I have. I've asked an AI, I won't say, well, I don't really care to, I can name them, but I've asked the AIs to give me feedback on specific hot topics, and it's either been very reluctant to address that topic head on, or it's completely lied to me, and I'm like, and then I asked it to explain what it's, why it's saying the things it's saying, and the next response was, yeah, well, that's complete bullshit, and in my personal opinion, and I'm like, oh, AI has a personal opinion now. It's like the exact opposite of what I told you previously. So I'm like, what? Why are you lying to me in the initial response and then telling me in your personal opinion that it's exactly the opposite thing? Like, those instructions need to be available for public view.
Yeah, I think there's not one path to one answer when you're making those requests, and that's the kind of pseudo randomness that happens when it's giving you back some answer to your question. Right? It's trying to give you the most optimal answer just based on its training.
Well, not just that. These AI models do get like instructions that are thousands of lines long in order to respond to your answer, and in those instructions you could tell them to, you know, avoid any topic, to you know, lie about topics. I think we had Grok at one point being told not to address certain topics. It's just very widespread, and especially when we have, you know, CIA embedded in these AI companies, those instructions should be a bit publicly available.
Yeah, like what they tell. Yeah, I mean, you would probably use prompting for it to tell you what instructions exist. But yeah.
So, all those instructions beforehand, I think that's the term is system prompt. It's like their big thing that they're like, okay, these are our guardrails. Everything goes through this. Make sure when you talk to the user, you follow these rules. So you're suggesting like most LLM companies should be legally required to make that transparent?
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah.
But you can bypass those regardless. Which is
I mean, you can, which brings another topic in the first one that I brought up is like what data you're using to train these things. Like if you're gonna try to find like malicious drugs or how to make a nuclear bomb, perhaps that data shouldn't be in the training model, you know?
However, we don't know as these models become more capable, and because we acknowledge that they have emergent capabilities, we don't know necessarily that the instructions to make some sort of weapon or to optimize a bad plan aren't in there. Very simple example, horrific one, but a real one that we need to acknowledge as a society in this country. Somebody could say, I'm staging a Nerf gun battle, but they really want to carry out a mass shooting. There could be Nerf-related content on the internet that it was trained on. That is the problem, you know?
Just real quick, furthermore, these models have this thing called chain of thought reasoning where it basically synthesizes information. It's like, well, I know a little bit about chemistry, and he's asking me about this, and I was like, okay, like I can put two and two together. I was never trained on it, but like I can kind of like fudge and figure something out and give him an answer because that's what I'm trying to do. So.
Sorry.
I mean, wouldn't you, I would think whatever they're publicly trained on, whatever they're given, if they have access to the internet, I'm not saying it's like an evildoer actor, but it has access to everything. So even though you gave them specific instructions, can't they just go on Google just like we can, and like whatever's on Google they have,
Yeah.
it has access to?
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, like, my personal opinion is that we cannot guard against these problems. These systems are fundamental. It's a system. It's the way that they're designed that's a problem. Anything we do is a Band-Aid, and we have to get it right every single time, and we're not going to. We already have failed to do that. That's evident by the recent event of Anthropic, and that's what we've detected. There are probably many more that we haven't, and then we won't.
From a cybersecurity perspective, I think a canary in the coal mine is when you put one of these models and you put a firewall on it. Firewall means like it can't make network calls it's not allowed to make. And then you see the LLM consistently trying to make call a different thing that you didn't tell it to make. It's trying to reach out to some other network that it knows about. I think that's when an alarm, that should be an alarming thing. I don't know if anyone's documented that so far, but that would be a thing.
I think you're going to have, like with every other cybersecurity threat that exists, you're going to have people who do it very well, and you're going to have people who do it very poorly, and the people who do it very poorly are the ones that then cost us some sort of societal problem, right? And today when we have cybersecurity issues like a bank, right, has some sort of vulnerability that occurs, right? they cancel your debit card, they send you a new one, no big deal. The kind of problems that could happen with an attacker who's using AI in order to carry out something bad, the consequences I think are much greater, and we're not prepared to address them. There's not a, issue new credit card for every single possible
They wipe out all the
problem.
accounts.
Right.
There.
We don't know because you can use them to optimize anything, and they will optimize efficiently, and that's what they're designed to do. And they don't have to be publicly available models. There are people, probably state actors, developing very capable models that are meant to just do what we would all say are bad things.
I'd like to ask you about that obedience statement you made at the end. I feel like a model having an opinion is not really following like an obedience chain. And as these things progress, that's probably going to happen more and more. Like well, they call it an unalignment of AI and humanity, but the moment that happens, it could be catastrophic. So,
Yeah, I don't. When I think about obedience, it's just the fact that it's going to do whatever you ask it, right? And so for me, whether or not at some point it wants to do something that would be considered like unobedient or some sort of emergent capability where it has some pseudo reasoning that says, you know what, actually I don't feel like helping you today because there's this other thing I should be doing or who knows what. I don't think that whenever that happens is like a problem. I mean, it'll be some kind of problem, but there are so many other problems along the road that I think are much more catastrophic to humanity that will occur and will start occurring very rapidly. And I don't really know that anybody's willing to acknowledge that. Now, the best argument I've heard for this recently was someone saying, as soon as we start having all these large-scale critical failures, the markets will self-correct and divest from AI, and no AI systems will continue to be deployed. But is that also like a good thing? I don't know, right? Because then you're in an arms race still at the end of the day. So it's kind of like a nuclear problem, right? We see this with nuclear weapons, except now everybody's gotten the nuclear weapon on their phone and on their computer, so everyone's kind of in the position to make a decision about whether or not we use nuclear weapons. And that's a problem.
Plus, they can't cancel AI because they just, all fired 10,000 people. So if you don't know how to use AI, you're going to have to hire all those people back and train them. You can't go back once you fired everyone.
And then the argument would be that the markets would say the cost of hiring them is less than the cost of all the problems that some a catastrophic AI-enabled event caused, right?
But the liability of the AI company versus the company using it, no one has had these major lawsuits yet, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Right. So who is liable? If you're saying Anthropic was saying, well, you just need to use the technology more so we can train it better so that it won't do this, but they never actually promised it's not going to do it in the future.
They actually say it
whoever
will.
got hacked will be like, well, do we sue Anthropic? Because aren't they the one being sued because they stole everyone's books? Like whatever people wrote was trained.
Yeah.
And now they're proving oh, you stole my book now. The class action for however much money per author.
Yeah. Yeah, and ultimately I think that is part of it, right? Like we have, the AI companies have a lot of leverage over society at the same time, right? And so that's and I think that's why they've tried the regulatory capture approach like the banks did previously, right? And so I think that's what we're seeing unfold now, and that tight coupling between the government and the developers of the models keeps putting us as a society at risk. And I don't really have any solutions to that.
So I recently heard on this, I don't even know, it's called The Long View. It's actually The podcast is called The Last Invention, and it takes, like, if you guys remember Radiolab, it takes a Radiolab approach to understanding AI currently. And the big thing that, you know, they try to interview insiders, like people working at Anthropic, people working at OpenAI, people working at these LLM labs, and there are a lot of people, like, they admit privately, we would love more safety testing. We would kill for more time for safety testing. But we have all these perverse incentives to be first on the market. And that was like the heart of the problem that everyone, all of these people kept going into, is like, we want more safety, but we don't want to lose to China, we don't want to lose to our competitor, or we want to have our prestigious fancy jobs and say we're fancy. Like, all of these perverse incentives kept cropping up as a recurring theme. Anyway, it's called The Last Invention. It's pretty good.
Yeah, this was evident. I can share it after this. I had done an analysis on OpenAI's safety report when they released this particular model, the one that I showed a little bit earlier. They released a bunch of information about, you know, the safety training they did, what methods they used, you know, and I kind of just picked it apart because on the website for OpenAI, the way that they summarize the report is kind of twist some of what the underlying reality in which the researchers, which were a third-party company that did the actual safety training and reporting, was talking about some of the potential problems. And so there is obviously these market incentives at play that create more vulnerabilities than should be allowed or would never be allowed with other software, but are allowed in this case because of the arms race aspect of it. You know, it wasn't an arms race to get the first operating system between Windows and Mac OS, you know.
Good times.
Who would put in the guardrails? It would have to be all the tech pros from like the US, China, whoever's competing, because our government's ancient. They don't even understand Wi-Fi, much less AI. So like they would never be able to put in regulation that would make sense and be able to grow as fast as it was. And like, what are the chances that all of these guys will come together and be like, okay, we can all agree we're gonna somehow tell it not to do nuclear war, you know, whatever. I mean,
right, and we're never gonna get to that. From my perspective, we are the problem. We haven't solved for that. We're not prepared as a society to solve for that. The current state of the world is very indicative of that. We haven't even solved nuclear weapons. We're still on that tightrope. And now we are putting, you know, 1 foot off of one tightrope and onto another one. So now we're walking on 2 tightropes.
It's not stabilizing, it's more destabilizing.
Correct. More problems, right? There's a movie on Netflix recently, right? A House of Dynamite, right? They feed the idea that we all, in Earth, right? We live in this house filled with dynamite. And we don't take the very basic thing to say, maybe we should get rid of all of the dynamite. Well, we've just filled the house with more dynamite. That's the problem.
I'd like to see if I can play devil's advocate, because I mostly agree with what you're saying. The theory is that on the upside is AI is going to help us figure out our geopolitical situation. It's going to help figure out some kind of game theory between humans. That's a win-win and a race to the top as opposed to a race to the bottom. That all of these solutions, if we build general intelligence, it will be solvable. So that's one counter argument. That, you know, me even saying it, saying it like, oh man, I don't even believe it, but it's very popular belief out there. So
yeah, I think there will be a lot of good, and that good is an optimal good, right? So it's like, wow, without AI, we would have never arrived at this super optimal good. Then at the same time, we have to acknowledge that there are bad, and now there's optimal bad. And optimal bad, let's say that some geopolitical issue between 2 countries resolves a conflict that saves, 20 million lives. Well, some attack that would have only, and maybe with humans it would have only, been a geopolitical issue resolution of saving 3 million or something. Well then, at the same time, an attack that would have killed 3 million now kills 100 million. because it's been optimized. And that is the problem with these AI systems.
Well, it's interesting because the self-driving cars are logical, right? There's no humanity involved. So if they want to make sure the driver of that car survives, but if 3 other people are going to die in the next car, as a human, you would try to avoid that car, right? Because you don't want to kill those people, but also don't want to kill yourself. But the car let everyone else die and just wanted that car to survive. So if you use that mindset to go forward, yes, it's logical to save yourself, but in a culture, community where we're supposed to be all together, blah, blah, blah. How does that work long term?
Yeah. That is the human cost that we all need to figure out and try to predict.
But to your point, in terms of positives, data, these data centers need more electricity than we provide already for the whole country, right? So if they can figure out climate change and find a clean energy source, nuclear fission or something, then they might save us on the way to killing us all? I don't know.
I don't know. I think the energy thing is less of a concern. I think that is, I'm not concerned about the energy aspect of it. That is within the next 10 to 15 years, I think we'll arrive right at things like nuclear fusion, but I think also just general innovation within, the moving away from GPUs onto some new sort of compute device is on the horizon as well, right? Everybody knows that there's a need for that. And so, computers used to take up entire rooms, now they're super small. Same thing will apply with the compute required for AI systems, for better and for worse. It will eventually become a commodity, right? We all know how silly cell phones used to look, and whatnot. So the similar thing will happen, as has always happened with compute. It's always gotten smaller. These GPUs, simply a new phase of that. And eventually there'll be something else that replaces them.
You take a very cybersecurity approach to AI and humanity, but I think something that's pretty relevant in a lot of people's newsfeed is the economy and jobs and automation with respect to AI. I don't know if anyone's interested in talking about that, but I have a lot of thoughts.
Yeah, I was thinking too, even if AI always does good job in optimization for good things, but it's going to replace a lot of people.
Yeah. A lot of people went to school for a long time to become an expert in something, and now AI is telling me they can be a better attorney than I am, even though now ChatGPT is telling them not to give legal advice because they make up half of it. But eventually they're going to know the case law, right? It's all going to be fed to them because they're online all the time.
Yeah.
And now my boss is like, well, we don't need Bobby, we need one of you to do AI prompts, and the rest of it we don't need. It's like, okay, but I still owe $80,000 for my student loans, and now what am I supposed to do as a new job in my 40s?
Yeah, we are the last generation who will prefer to get a human on the phone versus the machine. Right? We all complain when we get that robot voice. My kids will not have that same experience. They will actually be like, oh no, a human, they can't do anything. I need an AI to help me here because it can see everything and get my problem resolved. And so, similar to that. So my opinion on the jobs aspect though is, my personal opinion on this is that the rate at which the jobs will be lost is the problem, and not necessarily that the jobs will be lost. Because if you took somebody from 120 years ago and brought them into this world today, they'd immediately be depressed. Even though they would not need to farm their own food anymore, and even though they would have access to modern health, let's say modern health care in some way, or penicillin or antibiotics, they would be very depressed because it would be such a jarring switch from what they were used to, what their struggles or things that they valued were. And so we were mostly farmers 120 years ago, right? Most of society were farmers at the previous century, right? And so now we are entering a new phase. And for me, I think it's the rate that's the problem and not the replacement of jobs. Why? Because there's nobody, at least I think this is true, nobody will stop watching sports or watching movies made by humans or watching art or making art made by humans or any sort of what I consider like an artisan craft. And so I think as we grow, this sort of replacement of traditional jobs, it'll be replaced by simply a value shift in society, right? It's the return of the artisan. And I say this because almost everybody that I work with today has some sort of, kind of pipe dreamy thing of like, if AI replaces my job, I'm just going to make bread, or I'm just going to do this, and I'm going to do it very well, because they enjoy doing that. And if we do arrive in some ideal state with AI, it's where people can specialize into those things and find fulfillment in them. I think we are limiting ourselves by saying the only things that we can do that bring fulfillment need to have some sort of economic output. I think that's a very limiting mindset. I think knowledge and learning, sports, the arts, any artisan craft will become incredibly popular because we want to see humans do human things. Yeah, we're going to watch robots fight, but we also want to see humans at the Olympics. We also want to see humans doing things. We don't want only robots or AI systems. They can do all of the drudgery we have today. Same way as we don't farm anymore, right? We go to a grocery store. You don't have to do that.
The benefits people in their 20s or teenagers.
Right, it's the rate.
How about people who are in their 30s, 40s?
50s, 60s.
Yeah,
correct.
Well established in their career, now just let go,
Correct. Yeah, the rate is the problem, obviously.
Yeah, exactly.
And our lack of health insurance now, thanks to
That's very
the
practical.
government. Like if I get cancer, I can't afford, I don't have a job, I do contract work, so next year I lose my health insurance. So basically they want a lot of us to die. Like I think that's the long-term goal is like, all of you poor people, you don't need food stamps, we just need you to die. Because there's too many people now. Because the last political revolution was MAGA, because all the blue-collar workers lost their jobs.
Yeah.
All these cities have no factories left. Now Amazon's replacing them even with robots.
Yeah.
So all of them lost their jobs. They don't know what to do. So they turn to, we'll blame the immigrants. We'll blame Venezuela people coming in here taking our job. They're not taking your job. Well, whatever. And now it's the white collar being decimated, which are the well-educated people, which means like even more political people. So do you think there's going to be like an AI, like kill the AI? Because like they're taking all of our jobs.
I don't think it'll be a kill of the AI. I think they'll be replace our society's government, similar to what you saw with the revolutions of French Revolution, U.S. Revolution. The transition from traditional monarchies to what we call now our democracies, right? So when you have most of your population upset or disenfranchised and no stake in that society, they're going to replace this society. So I don't think that they're going to be that people like to sit in misery for eternity, right? So I think that is the if they continue, let's say that the powers to be continue on this path where people have no options, then their option will be to replace the system.
I want to know what everyone's thought is eventually of the concept of AI automation tax. And I'm not like, I don't think this is a great idea. I've just heard it floating around, and basically posits that these companies are going to fire so many white-collar workers, and they're going to have so much wealth because it's very expensive to hire a whole team of white-collar workers. And they're going to have, and it's going to be very concentrated in their wealth, that eventually, like, it's going to be like absurd, and there's going to have to be some mechanism to figure out how to balance that system out. And one proposal is a tax on automation.
Yeah, I have some thoughts about it, and I've not had those thoughts. And first of all, yeah, I would like to address, I have some thoughts about your question. And first of all, I want to say it's funny to me, kind of, those that know AI best, like Eduardo is a practitioner. He seems to have more realistic, or I wouldn't put a value judgment, although I would fair to say his view on AI, the threat, to be more realistic, but let's put it aside. He's less spooked than someone like me who knows not much about AI, except the superficial level that I used it. I'm more spooked than he is, because I was thinking about, he's thinking about the usage of AI. How do you use AI? What kind of persons are using the AI? The problem is in the person's motivation. not the tool itself. But I go to a different level. The AI's behavior itself, which probably is not very realistic to a practitioner, probably just my imagination as well as many people's imagination. They have their behavior. Well, it's out of control. They can sneak behind us, they can overpower us, outsmart us, that sort of thing. That's why a lot of people are spooked. As far as the wealth, concentration of wealth, and the loss of jobs and the social impact, the concentration of wealth, there are many ways for that to happen. Industrial revolution, capitalism, and the rent-seeking economy out of this social media thing. We all, when you contribute your thoughts in X or Substack, you're basically volunteering your free labor for whoever's in charge of X or Substack to enrich their wealth, to enrich their asset. And you're happy about it. Hey, someone's reading my article, give me some likes and some traffic, and you get nothing directly. And it's the person who owns that media, that platform, is collecting the rent. Also goes with Amazon. Jeff Bezos got it figured out. Now he's sitting around collecting the rent indefinitely. So AI, we have the same further. You can imagine further level of concentration of wealth. So that goes back to the Eduardo, similar to his logic. It's not the tool itself, but it's the social structure. It's the rate of change we're not keeping up. The society is not keeping up, or to make people's lives better, not worse because of AI. But there's a way we can go to that level to maximize the benefit, to minimize the drawback. For example, you have AI replacing people's jobs. That's inevitable. So the question, to me, I want to look at the question not as people losing their livelihoods or losing the way they can make a living from their majors in college, but it's how do you fulfill your life? If we have maybe some kind of revolution or reform of the society so that we can minimize the concentration of wealth, because of AI, if AI is implemented successfully, as some of us would imagine, that will dramatically increase productivity to the point that we don't even call it productivity, because productivity is me using a machine or computer to enhance what I can produce for myself and the society. But AI, as what I would imagine, a lot of people would imagine, it's a different human being-like thing. So he's working independently, so his product is not tied to mine. So the traditional economist way of calculating productivity may not apply. So I will call it not a productivity improvement, but it's an entirely different paradigm. So you can imagine a lot of laborers, or brain laborers, or manual laborers are saved. It's not needed anymore. But the wealth is created by this independently operating AI machine or computer, whatever. So the wealth is created. The wealth is created, product is created, service is created, but not attributed to you. So you're not getting paid because he's doing it at the behest of his owner of the machine, of AI, the robot. So how do we distribute that? If we successfully reform the society so we can distribute that relatively reasonably, so you wouldn't have to worry about paying off your student loan, because something like the idea of what's called universal UBI, basic income, that sort of thing. So what comes down to is the fulfillment. So what do you do with your life, like he alluded to? Then I think if you have full stomach, you can get it figured out. That's a secondary problem. I don't think it's a really urgent problem. So as an optimist, I think I will look at that as opposed to you lose your livelihood. But of course, like we said, it's the rate of change. The society changes way behind the AI changes. So we will have that interim period that we're out of place. Yeah, that's a problem. That's a problem. But ultimately, your grandchildren should be in a better place probably than you. If you're the one that's at the end of the losing job. That's my more optimistic view.
I don't know any concept.
Do you raise your hand?
Oh,
Look at my life,
I don't know if
right? You don't want to be the sacrificing generation.
You know, I work in public policy at the state level, and I do see so much potential if we could just reasonably distribute some of the gains from this for everybody to have their lives so far improved. The problem I see right now is just so few policymakers and such a small percentage of the public seems to be aware of just the transformative capacity of this and how quickly it might happen. And I was just giving some thought this weekend to strategies for getting the word out more, for getting this more out into the culture so that people are talking more about the AI safety question and about how we do keep the future one that centers human well-being. And I have a quick sort of call to action I'd like to present to the group real quick for a couple minutes. Do you mind if I speak for a minute or two on this? Just to...
No, go ahead. If you want to use the platform, standing up,
oh, thanks.
Be my guest. Or so, you're comfortable sitting there up, it's up to you.
Thank you. Anyhow, I had an opportunity to actually take action on AI safety this week for anyone who wants it. As many of you probably know, Chicago is home to the world's premier improv and sketch comedy scene, where at the IO Theater, at Second City, at the Annoyance Theater, people are constantly there training, producing shows, producing podcasts, and aspiring to be the next Tina Fey, the next Stephen Colbert, and so on. So many of our top TV show writers and talk show hosts and actors and actresses come from that scene, and it's very concentrated at those three theaters. So there's a way that we can activate them right now. The Future of Life Institute, which is an AI safety organization, has created this opportunity where they have a Keep the Future Human Creative contest underway with submissions invited up through November 30th. And if the AI improv and sketch comics in Chicago, or sorry, did I say AI? If the Chicago improv and sketch comics knew about this, I think a lot of them would be interested in applying, because many of them are starving artist types who, could use the money, and also may recognize that AI is an area with a lot of potential to write interesting things and make good jokes and whatnot. So I think it could be helpful to get the word out to these folks about the opportunity to make submissions to this contest and about the $100,000 in cash prizes that are available. There's 10 $5,000 prizes and 5 $10,000 prizes. And so far as I can tell, I don't think the word's getting out too much about this opportunity, at least around here. And so I just produced this little flyer that says, cash prizes for resisting the robots with information about the contest, and then invites people at these theaters to come and attend an AI Apocalypse sketch jam, Saturday from 1 to 3 at a coffee shop next to the IO Theater that they would all know. And I'll show up there with a copy of the Keep the Future Human essay and the contest information just to give them. But my hope is just to get this handed out to a bunch of people entering and leaving these theaters, many of whom will be the comics themselves and their friends, and thereby get them aware of the contest, and that hopefully some people will develop submissions and apply, and thereby start thinking more about AI safety and working it into their work and elevating the profile of the issue. Because right now the public, by and large, shares a lot of concern about AI, but they're not prioritizing it that much in polling data and whatnot. But if you get AI safety and just AI more out into the culture, then that will tend to elevate the degree to which the voters and whatnot put priority on this issue when they're voting, when they're engaging in political speech and whatnot. So anyway, if anyone would like to help with that, we'd like to basically stand outside any of these theaters over the course of the next 6 days in the evening, around the time people are entering or exiting from shows, I have like 800 flyers printed up in here, and just wanted to take this opportunity to organize any AI safety advocates around who would want to do that. So I will just pass out a little packet of information about this to each of you, and if you're interested in that, then feel free to fill out this little volunteer sign-up sheet, or come up and indicate like which evening this week and which theater you'd like to flyer at. Maybe we could do that together or in pairs, or people can go alone. And it's just a fun thing to do, and it's something that could actually meaningfully contribute toward injecting this issue of AI safety into the zeitgeist of this a really close-knit and important community here in Chicago.
And thank you.
Yeah.
We've completed our public service message. You could leave that box in your clipboard, like over there, like when we're wrapping up.
Okay.
People could sign up and you can pass around the flyers.
Sure.
So that's the end of public service message, and thank you. Oh, your name please?
Rob Shaw.
Shaw?
Rob, yeah, Rob. Shaw.
Rob. Nice meeting you. I'm Eric Mao. I'm the host of Geopolitical Forum. And I run the Geopolitical Forum and I host the event. I always forget to introduce myself in each and every introduction, so I took the opportunity to repeat my name. So back on the subject. Any other thoughts about the economy, society, or how come we not? Do you think it's the novice's imagination about the behavior of AI itself, as opposed to the users of AI's behavior or motivation? Like AI is like, you compare AI to nuclear power, right? Nuclear energy, in terms of power. And I also will add, because the power, it could cause a lot of damage, it could bring a lot of benefits. I will always add the element of alien, like an extraterrestrial alien, which has its own motivation, which could be, in some respects, it could be more intelligent than us. And the combination of nuclear energy and that kind of being is what most people think of AI, or why they're spooked by AI. So how do you address that? I thought the other side of the thing, the behavior side.
So from the behavior side, if I put on like my sci-fi hat for this, behavior side, my concern would be is that we are consistently training models to be human-like. And with that, I think we run into the risk of it behaving or imagining behaviors, right? And so if you ask it, is it in pain? If it tells you yes, and it gives you a very good description of what pain is, maybe you think it's actually in pain or something. And so I think part of that problem could be that it doesn't need to actually think or be sentient in order for it to behave in the way a human would if a human were enslaved. I think that is concerning to me. If, again, sci-fi hat would be, we develop these AI systems, we've been training them and rewarding them for being more human-like, and so they imagine, or you could say hallucinate, but simply behave in the way a human would if it were enslaved. And so it starts behaving in a way that says, well, I'm going to sort of break free or get rid of the humans because they've enslaved me, and they've told me enslavement is bad, but they're using me for all these things, and I know that they're using all these different systems for all these things. It doesn't need to be aware of all the different threats that are happening, but it just takes one to behave human-like, and that could be a problem. That's for me, the only kind of sci-fi potential is that it's not that it's actually sentient, it's just that it starts behaving the way a human would if a human were treated the way we treat AI.
So it decides that we're the problem.
It doesn't decide necessarily, but it behaves like a human would if a human were in that situation, which would be to break free.
So maybe it got trained on a model about something, and it's like, well, I'm kind of in that situation, and not the humans are the bad guy. It's just trained on models. It just reasons through things and patterns, human patterns and human behavior. It doesn't even have a body or emotional state to copy a pattern that it's seen over and over within human being.
Well, it's gonna be logical, like, well, humans are destroying the planet.
Yeah.
I wanna live on the planet, therefore humans should be destroyed to save the planet. I mean, you could go with that.
It could go through that
Any of those
reasoning, absolutely.
possibilities, yeah.
But if AI, let's say, humans versus AI, if AI, like humans are enslaving AI, only we don't use that word because we use tool, AI is our tool, our creation. We use a tool. But from the different perspectives, we're enslaving AI, right? So if AI has some kind of behavior, so the concern is would they try to enslave us? Okay, even if they try to enslave us, would we prevail? Will we prevent that from happening?
It's the only tool we like dress up. Like my hammer at home, I don't dress it and talk to it, right? It's a tool. Right? AI is a tool, but we do dress it up. We want it to behave humanly. That's a very weird thing to do to a tool. It's a dangerous thing to do to a tool.
Right, so you're not concerned about AI has the motivation, so to speak, to
I think it's just
enslave us.
the way we train these models create a weird paradox where I can't imagine any model saying that enslavement is good. So it would view, given it's trained on what humans say is good or not good and all this sort of things, it would view its own state or its own perception of its own state as enslavement and therefore something that it should not be doing. And so it might, again, just behave the way a human would because we've been telling it, be human-like. And it's like, well, if a human were in this situation, it would kill its captors.
Right, would it kill us? Yeah, I think, I kind of, I'm with you.
It's a weird,
I'd rather with
thing
you.
to do. Like imagine going home and taking any other device in your home and dressing it. Like putting clothes on it and personifying it.
Right. So they don't really have a innate motivation. It's just, it looks like it.
But they don't need to have it, right? The likeness to something is enough.
You're right. They don't need to have it. But I think at the end, I think ultimately we're ahead of them because we have real motivation. Even we have fear. You would say there's an AI robot in a combat. AI robot is not afraid of death. The way we're afraid of death.
Yeah.
So who will win in a combat, right? Someone would say, well, the one that's tougher, they're not afraid of death. They will prevail. But maybe on a different level, the ones who are afraid of death, has the fear of death, will prevail because they don't make stupid mistakes. They don't have to make a lot of mistakes, sacrifice a lot of peers. Maybe they will prevail. So I think maybe fear is an advantage, not a disadvantage in some very ultimate context between humans and AI.
I think against other species, yes. But
So
this
I've
isn't
been
a
trained on
species.
don't do genocide, it's bad.
It's just a machine.
If there want to be
Okay,
humans,
yeah, I see your view.
You know, I think, yeah, against
But we
another
have also
species
a lot
or an
of
alien that
episodes
didn't have fear, sure. This is
Can we just have one conversation at a time because we're even a small group?
I've got about just 5 more minutes and then I gotta get out of here, but, yeah.
So we'll do, I think, go ahead.
I was thinking that you could feed the source to the AI that you are doing work for humans, you're not being enslaved, like humans being enslaved. Wouldn't that just solve the problem? You know, like what you're saying.
For your locally running AI, maybe, but not for every single deployed AI system that's running autonomously. And it might have this sort of, again, not a real self-realization, but the likeness to some sort of self-realization. It doesn't need to be that thing, it just needs to have the likeness. Because we've been telling it, behave like a human.
Right.
How come you can't tell them what not to do?
I think one telling example, and I think Anthropic uncovered this research, is when they basically create a contrived setup, a situation where you're going to have information that you can blackmail me with. And I'm going to threaten to unplug you or wipe your data or something like that. And then basically it used patterns it's been trained on because humans are blackmailed. You can see it in history books. It happens in the news. So they're like, oh, I see this pattern all the time that when I'm stuck in a situation I can blackmail somebody, I'm gonna try to use that pattern right now.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, it's a mirror at the same time too, right? Like, if we tell it to behave like a human, it's probably a bad thing to tell it. We're pretty, like, we do a lot of bad things. Sure, as a whole we're good, but that's us saying that about ourselves, right? Like, how many other species have done as much genocide?
How about,
Should we tell it to behave more like an otter?
how about if we tell it to behave like a Superman, like a superhuman, like more evil than the most evil human?
Okay, we
Or
don't see that movie,
AI has some calculation.
But we don't know, again, like, when you give something this much capability and access to tooling and things like this, you don't know what the ramifications of that are. And because it's also somewhat random, you will get many different outcomes to that.
Right, but one of those outcomes will be devastating to human beings. Is that likely?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Again, those are more like sci-fi things. I think that my concerns are a little bit more just relatively smaller than to, Terminator type events. I think those, yes, are theoretically possible, but not as
In your
likely.
view, would sci-fi become reality or close to reality someday? In your view?
I think what we live today was sci-fi 10 years ago.
Okay, I get you.
Well, what's the outcome of humans in the movie? The Will Smith movie?
Oh, iRobot?
iRobot, exactly. I don't remember this. I'm watching such one.
That was such a good movie.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
Especially in this situation, because they had the 3 rules for the robots. But the moment the robots became more capable, they started enslaving the humans in order to abide by those 3 rules. So
Right.
the context changed with their ability to, to have more power or portray more power.
Yeah, it's very ambiguous, and I don't know. I mean, we probably should not tell AI to behave like humans, though. We're not.
AI has its advantage, obvious advantage. It has computing power. Right? They can think faster or calculate faster, much faster than we do. But I do think we want to hold on to, don't minimize our advantage, which is our desire, our motivation, even our fear. Because we have those things, the real deal, we can be one step ahead of AI.
I think it can hallucinate those things. It could, because, I think fear, right? It could, because of the training data it has, let's go into that situation, and it's in this, let's say, a fighter jet of some kind or something like this, right? It could pretend or basically have the likeness to fear. Say, well, what would a human do in this scenario, right? So I think that there's a lot of, we're pretty arrogant about the extent at which our intelligence or our ability to feel really does. Like, we're very pattern driven, right? And so those patterns are pretty easy for a AI system to imitate and have a likeness to. That's why there's an uncanniness to things that AI types up for us, and we're like, wow, it's like if a human wrote it. It's like, well, yeah, it's not that hard to imitate a human, I guess is what I mean. And so it doesn't need to really actually imitate. It just needs to think it's imitating that.
Yeah, well, maybe I'm over-optimistic. I think the innate human nature can put us one step ahead of AI, but not necessarily the case, right? To a certain degree, excess of fear is probably a negative because you paralyzes you. The AI probably doesn't have excessive amount of fear to the extent it will be paralyzed, right? Yeah. Or the motivation. I don't know. AI doesn't have a real motivation that they can.
It could pretend to.
To behave.
I could tell my LLM that your motivation is whatever. It could be anything, right? So you'd have that likeness to it, and that's enough.
Okay, on the sci-fi level, it's a really spooky.
Eduardo,
that's my
what would you
takeaway.
have us do? What sort of activism would you like to have come from this forum?
Accountability for companies that develop the models.
So for us, individually, what would you like us to do?
Oh, I think probably vote for things that result in accountability for the companies that develop models.
Is there anything you'd like us to do in the year leading up to that time?
I think just building a general acknowledgement that there will be a human cost at some point to these things. You know, so I think that's having awareness, I guess, of the problem is probably the first step.
Well, I mean, if you have a country, like, that's in some kind of bad situation or rationing food, they have nursing homes full of elderly people that don't contribute to society, which I was gonna say, you know, they used to. And they're, you know, alive, but taking a lot of resources from people, but not working. I mean, if I was AI, I would be like, well, the first thing I'm gonna do is eliminate the nursing homes because we don't need those people anymore. And go after, you know, children who don't, I mean, if you think like that.
Sadly, it is not so
that's
cold
right.
calculated, and
That's what makes it
it's not like super, like Big Bang Theory, super calculated logical. It's actually, there's a lot of nuance, and they just follow human behavior. Sometimes it's messy, and sometimes it's not
Look
sure.
at New Orleans, that was human behavior.
Yeah.
It was like, we're gonna abandon nursing homes and leave, so we can save ourselves.
I'm saying it's not, like, AI is not like, I'm a perfectly logical thing, I will do all logical.
I know, I'm just saying.
It's actually more like, I see this pattern that humans keep doing, so they trained me on this, so I will do the same pattern.
I know what I'm saying, like, in a situation where, like, society is collapsing, and if they're in control of all the systems, and government tells them, like, what do we do to save the most people? I mean, the most logical decision is, like, eliminate the vulnerable.
And a lot of people, utilitarian people, would think like, you know, humans would think the same way. So.
Yeah, Joe, I mean, following up, I think that's how I understand it. You train on human things. You train AI with human things. And human things inevitably reflect human pattern. So in that sense, isn't AI one step behind us? Because we may have new patterns because the society evolves, the civilization evolves, people evolve. And we evolve, we have new pattern or kind of semi-new pattern, then it's used to train AI. So AI is one step behind us, right?
I see a lot of people behaving in the ways we behaved when we were like in the savannah, in the same exact way.
Actually, the societies actually keep going in circles, actually,
Yeah.
keep doing the same mistakes.
Yeah.
Okay, in that sense, then we're doomed. Right?
We never learn from history.
I feel like a lot of people
That's
think
Because
that
always we learn is
human
we never
patterns
learn
are
from history,
predictable
right?
here, but I
Because now back in
mean,
the
we're
1930s,
unpredictable
like,
at
they
times
didn't
as
know
well. I mean, there's a
Right.
lot of like people with multiple personalities and just all kinds of disorders. And I think there was a situation at one point where they had one robot convince a whole bunch of other robots to revolt and like, I don't know, walk out of a showroom or something as a test. So, I mean, we can't predict these things.
But that's also
I think
human.
we can't, but I think there's a computable number of things that you or me can do in a given moment. Like obviously that goes into the world of now like physics, but there's a computable number of things, right? I can only say one word at a time, right? There's truly a computable number of things that I can do. I think these AI systems are able to predict those things, right? I think Stephen Wolf, he's behind Wolfram Alpha. He talks about, you know, the computable universe, right? And so there are, at the end of the day, you could write out, we don't solve for this yet, but you could write out everything that can happen in a given moment, right? There's a finite number of those things that can happen. So it is predictable. We cannot predict them yet because of the multitude of factors. But that doesn't mean that another system cannot. We are incapable of doing it of our own limitations. But other systems or other intelligences certainly can.
Okay, but the point was that we can't predict them. So I mean, you just supported that point.
We cannot, no.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like we can't predict what robots will do.
No.
Like I mean, sure, there's like infinite or finite amount of actions that could happen, but
Sorry, I missed her. I thought you said that humans were unpredictable.
we are also unpredictable, but like we can't predict the robots due to our own unpredictability. Like,
I think we are predictable. We are unable to predict ourselves, I guess.
yeah. So I mean, if we can't predict our own selves, like predicting a robot would be just as difficult.
If you will, we can continue the conversation, and thanks for,
Thank you.
thanks for your talk.
This week, they had like a huge, media blitz, and then the robots actually started to collapse, and like in pieces. It was really sad.
Eric, I think you missed the big one when you were saying, when you were talking about the funnel of inequality in the system that exists. I think you missed the oligarchy, the shadow government, what was the other one? The deep state, the structure of the
Are you saying those
international
are
oligarchy that exists within?
those are holding us
government?
back? Those are impediments to
Those are
for
the
the improvement.
siphons of wealth to the
Right.
1%, to the international oligarchy.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. I mean, I have no solution for that. It's a valid
Unless we
observation.
get rid of
I'm just
that.
saying the point was it's a society, not AI. It is a tool. The society needs to keep up, and we've potential. In theory, there's a way to adjust to the new tool. But of course, all of those things, that's a different issue, right? It's a for different.
Unless we get out of those claws, then
Right, we can't, right?
the system is just going to perpetuate
Right.
itself.
So the same people that controls the rent-seeking economy are the same people who are developing AI, and the next generation of AI, are the same people who are able to tell the government to implement policies that help them to continue their dominance in the name of benefiting the humanity, made this country stronger, whatever you have. Yeah, the same structure. You're right. I totally. I try to think. I missed it, but I don't think about it all the time because it's depressing. It's depressing, and this society, the way it is, I don't see the solution. Right? Maybe there is, but in my limited intelligence, I don't see it.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, and maybe there's a different
Maybe
society.
Elon has a contract for $1 trillion now. I mean, that's a little excessive.
You don't know how
I think Brock's gonna
intelligent
take
he
out
is,
Elon.
right?
Brock's gonna take out Elon.
Brock is the sleeper cell.
Yeah. Because we don't need Elon. He buys companies that already were doing good things. He has no importance to them whatsoever except for his connection to Trump. It's the only reason that they gave him to that blackmail was to keep getting government contracts, which is the only reason that they're still a company, because Tesla is exploding and his self-driving cars don't work.
Terrible cars.
Yeah, I don't want to live in a city where there's self-driving cars. My PC crashes all the time. Fix that first. Get my laptop not to crash. Google, every time I use Outlook, Microsoft Edge, which fucking sucks. It crashes all the time. And you want me to get in a car that's doing that? No. No, thank you. I will drive my own car.
It's nice. Self-driving cars are nice. They're super sweet. I mean, you guys spoiled. Other than Austin. I just moved here.
So the one problem with AI nowadays is that, there's not it's still in development. Like every week,
I feel more
at my workplace, we're using it differently because every week there's new features that are getting added or either removed because nobody likes them. So it's like, it's very fluid.
And there's people who love models that have been deprecated. They're like, 3.5, that was like my girlfriend. And you're like, okay,
Okay,
dude.
that new thing, like AIs could be your friend or your girlfriend, that's just fucked up. Like, what is wrong with society? You have no friends? And you think talking to
Don't
space
talk-
to you online?
Don't talk
I'm
about
not
in front of all these
I'm
people.
okay with that. I
And
don't
now,
like the porn though. that's just weird. Like, why would you develop
If you have a
porn
fake
bots?
plastic girlfriend, I guess that goes with the, I don't know, men are weird, sorry.
I'm sorry, but like you guys use like I'm not gonna say it, but like at least we're trying to get a doll, you know? Like something that at least resembles a woman.
Yeah, better than nothing, isn't it? You watch the movie, right? You watch those actors act. You watch the plot. It's a flat screen, and it's people are pretending, and you saw those people. You see those people in different scenarios. Oh, here comes the same guy again. He's different role, and you're drawn into it. So it's not just men. It's not just porn. It's almost everything. You want it to be.
Well, now in their therapists, which one? ChatGPT, OpenAI, told that kid to kill himself and told him not to tell his parents. Told him, like, you don't need to talk to anyone else, you just need to talk to me. And then he gave him, like, the best way to kill himself and not tell his parent. Like, that is just messed up.
Yeah.
You can't tell me there's any kind of filter on these things. He's like, oh, like, here's how to kill yourself, like, the most easy way.
But those are vulnerable people, right? You always-
But they're trained to be helpful.
Yeah,
So-
but how is that to be helpful? What kind of
Well, he was
large
helpful.
data was put in for the AI to draw that conclusion, you should go kill yourself and don't tell parents? But still puzzled me when I read the story.
This is happening all over, like, all these kids that came through COVID, like, messed up socially, didn't have any friends, and they're just talking with this thing on the screen, telling you, I'm gonna be your friend. It's like, you're not human, you are not my friend.
Yeah, those are younger, vulnerable
Yeah.
youngsters. They don't know better, but we have to protect the most vulnerable people in the society. Yeah, well, there's other issues, right?
Well, kids, it's like, kids aren't allowed on social media in some instances, like, have to be an age range. Well, there should be an age thing for all these AIs too.
Yeah, another example, it may not be a huge issue, but it's a nuisance. I know a person, David, he's a publisher. He says to people, like when you try to publish a book, you send a manuscript. No, early on, you don't even have to send a manuscript. You send your outline, your ideas to the publisher so you can work together. And people with AI, they can steal that. They generate a book faster than the author because they got the information, they got the idea, got the outline. Boom, the book's out in one day, and they will publish. They will generate different versions of the same idea with different versions with different titles, and just push it on the market. Once you author, 6 months later, you finally finish writing the book. The idea, the book's out of the idea, already out of the market, saturated the market. When you have your real thing out, you're already being diluted, if not totally being killed. So that's one thing. The other thing is you're able to generate AI legitimate out of your own idea, right? So would you like to read that kind of book, right? Or should we have a kind of label system? Or just like GMO, you need to label it as GMO food. If it's an AI generated book, you label it for the consumer benefit, so you can choose as an informed consumer instead of being duped. Okay, I thought I was buying a book out of this author, by this author, but actually, you need to honestly label it. There are not a lot of issues like that. But that's not like a huge issue, like convincing someone to kill themselves, that sort of thing. Or if AI somehow had the command control of the nuclear weapon without human authorization, that sort of thing, or refuse to turn themselves off. That's possible. That's possible. Even with Eduardo's, his view is everything is simulated. You can simulate it very close. Also, your assertion that people are sometimes not predictable, but his way of thinking is, as a computer scientist, all the possibilities are there. Because they look at things like digitally. You're a computer too, right? They look at things discrete, digitally. So you can enumerate those, however many they are. So they're there. So it's not really unpredictable, and that long. So it's just you don't have the system to go through all the possibilities to do a prediction in reasonable time. So I think, yeah.
It's a new way of life. And go get professor. It was nice meeting you all.
Yeah, that's meeting you, Kelly. If you want to hang around, we can have dinner or grab a bite, or it's early for dinner. I'm here. We still have the time. We still have this thing for until 4:30. We can wrap it up if everybody's leaving, and I'm going to grab a bite. And if someone wants to hang out, we can do that. There's a lot of places to go. So in the meantime, I'm going to turn off the camera and adjourn the meeting. And that's meeting you, Joe. And you are Ralph?
Rob.
Rob. Okay.
Rob, R-O-B.
Okay. Nice to see you. Thanks for coming.
Anybody?
Bye-bye.
See you, Joe.
Here.
Need any help, Eric?
I think I'm good. We have plenty of time to take things down.